Morning, everyone. I'm going to do a talk today about Shakespeare's Tempest. Just going to look over a few points and how he's regarded by the Theosophical masters and teachers, because to go into it in too much detail, it would take probably several talks. So hopefully this is going to be a share screen. Sorry about that being a bit, it's always a bit clumsy, that changeover. So Shakespeare has always been a controversial figure in modern times. Some saying that someone else wrote his plays, though there is no concrete evidence to support the theory. Francis Bacon is one of the names put forward as a likely candidate for the author by some. But if we take some theosophical quotes into account, it would seem to justify the fact that Shakespeare was the true author. So Shakespeare is mentioned in theosophical literature quite a few times, which hints at his connection with the adepts. My good friend Shakespeare, wrote Mahatma K.H., quoting from him in a letter. And in her editorial opening for the first volume of Lucifer, H.P. Blavatsky wrote that Shakespeare's deep and accurate science in mental philosophy has proved more beneficent to the true philosopher in the study of the human heart, therefore in the promotion of truth, than the more accurate, but certainly less deep, science of any fellow of the Royal Institution. In a letter to A.P. Sinnott, H.P. Blavatsky stated that she wanted a student to write out the esoteric meaning of some of Shakespeare's plays for inclusion in the secret doctrine, and W.Q. Judge, one of the founders of the Theosophical Society, said that the adepts assert that Shakespeare was, unconsciously to himself, inspired by one of their own number. So this seems to affirm that it was indeed he that wrote the plays and no one else. Raghavan Iyer, the Indian theosophical writer, says, Shakespeare was a magnificent creative genius who, coming under Pneumanichaic influence, became a myriad-minded master of life and language. His amazing and expansive knowledge of the superphysical and the invisible, his penetrating and compassionate insight into human nature, his transcendent and kaleidoscopic imagination, his intuitive perception, and his inspired passages, all these at once are the expression and the evidence of the deep inwardness of his plays and of the luminous influence of adepts. So he goes on to say, what was the nature of adept influence upon the mind of Shakespeare? It is not to be thought that Shakespeare was from the first under the special care and observation of the Great Lodge, but rather that the superior possibilities embedded within himself were what adept inspiration spurred into stronger activity. This was possible because of the largeness of his mind and the receptivity of his soul. The breadth of his soul life could cause the offspring of his fancy to share richly in the vital fire that burns in the higher image-making power. Above all, he possessed the power, as John Masefield has written, to touch energy, the source of all things, the reality behind all appearances, and to partake of the storehouse of pure thought. End of quote. So when Raghavan Iyer mentions Pneumanichaic influence, he is writing about the three bodies connected to Buddhist teaching, Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Pneumanichaya. In The Voice of the Silence by H.P. Blavatsky, they're explained in a footnote, and about the Pneumanichaya, she says, it is that ethereal form which one would assume when leaving his physical body, he would appear in his astral body, having in addition all the knowledge of an adept. The Bodhisattva develops it in himself as he proceeds on the path. Having reached the goal and refused its fruition, he remains on earth as an adept, and when he dies, Instead of going into nirvana, he remains in that glorious body he has woven for himself, invisible to uninitiated mankind, to watch over and protect it. So it is hinted again that Shakespeare was overshadowed by one of these Nirmanakaya, but probably not aware of it. In the Key to Theosophy, H.P. Blavatsky refers to the fact that we are like players on a stage and have our entrances and exits. She says, the ego begins his life pilgrimage as a sprite, an Ariel or a Puck. He plays the part of a super, is a soldier, a servant, one of the chorus, rises then to speaking parts, plays leading roles, interspersed with insignificant parts, till he finally retires from the stage as Prospero, the magician. As we know, Prospero is the main character in the Tempest. So Prospero is regarded as being a highly evolved being. Well, the Tempest is generally thought to be one of his last plays, if not the last. And it is certainly his most mystical in nature. It was one of his shorter plays, but not the shortest, as this was the Comedy of Errors. So let's look at a summary of the play. In Act 1, close to a Mediterranean island, a storm overcomes a ship that carries King Alonso of Naples, his son Ferdinand, and his brother Sebastian. They were on their way home from Tunis to Italy when the storm hit and demolished their ship. Shipwrecked with them are the courtier Gonzalo and the Duke of Milan, Antonio. The courtiers from the ship are cast ashore unharmed, but the king is near despair, believing that Ferdinand, his son, drowned. Ferdinand has actually arrived safely on a different part of the island, where he meets Miranda, and they instantly fall in love. Prospero, fearing for his daughter, captures Ferdinand and forces him to carry wood and do tasks for him. In the meantime, Ariel seeks his freedom. Prospero promises that he will liberate Ariel from servitude, following the completion of just a few more tasks. In Act 2, Ariel uses music to lead the courtiers astray, while Sebastian and Antonio plot to kill the king while he is asleep. Their attempt is foiled by Ariel. All the people from the ship become ever more confused as they wander around. In another part of the island, the timid court fool Trinculo has come ashore and discovered Caliban. Trinculo hides beside Caliban from an approaching storm, and the ship's butler, Stefano, finds them. In Act 3 and 4, Stefano, Caliban, and Trinculo, at Caliban's suggestion, intend to kill Prospero and make Stefano lord of the island. They get very drunk before setting off to the cell to kill Prospero. Ariel, who's a sprite or elemental, if you like, who saw the whole thing in his invisible state, reports his wicked plot to his master. Meanwhile, Prospero has relented and gives his blessing to Ferdinand and Miranda's marriage. Then he entertains them with a mask of goddesses and dancing reapers before he remembers Caliban's plots. Prospero and Ariel then set a trap for the three plotters. Stefano and Trinculo fall for the plot and become distracted by gaudy clothes hung out for them, representing how we can be misled by material things. After they touch the clothing, they are chased away by the spirits, disguised as dogs. Act 5, the final act, Ariel brings all the courtiers to the cell, where Prospero, renouncing his magic, reveals himself. Instead of enacting his revenge, he forgives them and accepts the return of his dukedom. Ferdinand and Miranda are betrothed. Sailors come to announce that the ship is safe. Prospero fulfills his promise and frees Ariel, while Caliban and the drunken servants are rebuked. The play ends as all go to celebrate their reunions, and Prospero asks the audience to release him from the play. That's an interesting end to it. Release him from the play. So, just like life, it is often turmoil that brings about change. So the Tempest throws everything into confusion until the situation is resolved. We have to go through this ordeal to emerge from our constricting shell or our mind-forged manacles. So in one sense, Prospero would represent Atman, the spiritual being, which overshadows the other principles in man. The remaining constituents of man and woman. Miranda, the daughter of Prospero, could be Buddhi, the vehicle of Atman, and at once the expression and the essence of pure wisdom and of true compassion. So when towards the end she sees all the participants together, she says, "Oh wonder, how many goodly creatures are there here? How beauteous mankind is! Oh brave new world that has such people in it." In her innocence, she is only aware of the wonder of seeing so many people for the first time. It's like the Japanese concept of ichigo ichie, which refers to the fact that every time we meet someone, it is a new experience, even if it is our partner or a friend or a workmate that we see every day. Each morning we are born anew, and it is like a fresh incarnation. As above, so below. We should also see that no matter what a person's outer mask, inwardly we are all divine beings. And as Pythagoras says, "Take heart, for the race of man is divine." Miranda is such a beautiful archetype for all of us, and is a wonderful creation by Shakespeare, representing all the goddesses in the cultures of the world in their compassionate form. It is in this sense that Miranda represents the fallen and sleeping soul of the uninitiated and deluded man. She's like the sleeping beauty in one sense, who represents the soul that needs the kiss of the higher mind to awaken it. She is compassionate and innocent, maybe a kind of Kuan Yin or Tara figure in some ways. Ferdinand, the prince who falls in love with Miranda, could be made to symbolize that higher manus or mind, the incarnated ray of the divine man, while Antonio, the usurper, who plans to secure personal power at the cost of his weakening conscience, could represent the karma manus or the desire mind. To complete the picture, Caliban could be taken as the karma rupa, or the passionate part of man in material form, and Ariel is a high class of elemental used by the magician Prospero to do his bidding, as we see in this picture. Caliban is half human, half monster, son of the witch Sycorax. After his island becomes occupied by Prospero and his daughter Miranda, Caliban is forced into slavery. While he is referred to as a Calvaluna or moon calf, a freckled monster, he is the only human inhabitant of the island that is otherwise not honoured with a human shape. In some traditions, he is depicted as a wild man, or a deformed man, or a beast man, or sometimes a mix of fish and man, a dwarf, or even a tortoise. Banished from Algiers, Sycorax was left on the isle, pregnant with Caliban, and died before Prospero's arrival. Caliban, despite his inhuman nature, clearly loved and worshipped his mother, referring to Setebos as his mother's god and appealing to her powers against Prospero. Prospero explains his harsh treatment of Caliban by claiming that after initially befriending him, Caliban attempted to rape Miranda. Caliban confirms this gleefully, saying that if he had not been stopped, he would have peopled the island with a race of Calibans. So this seems to represent the attempt of the lower nature to prevent us awakening to our true self, and the fact that lust can be a barrier to true spiritual progress. Ferdinand, on the other hand, is the mind illumined by the love of the divine. And the marriage is the merging of the mind with the spiritual part of our nature, symbolized by Miranda. I said it is similar to the tale of the Sleeping Beauty, where the prince, who may represent the mind, has to overcome obstacles to reach the princess, who is the sleeping soul, and awakening her with a kiss, so that the mind is illumined by the buddhi, or the intuition, and so becomes manasa, which means the illumined mind. Sadly, many modern materialistic intellectuals who have no understanding of anything spiritual have totally misunderstood the inner meaning and interpreted it in the light of modern political and sexual ideologies, which puts another barrier in the way of humanity's awakening. In all of this, Prospero is like the spirit at the back of it all, managing the events as they unfold and bringing them to a harmonious conclusion. In the spiritual realms, there is only harmony. Unlike many of his plays, there is no thought of revenge here, only the restoration of that harmony. Prospero asks us to release him from the play, perhaps the play of life, so that he can reach nirvana. He says, "Our revels now are ended. These are actors, as I foretold you, were all spirits and are melted into air, into thin air. And like the baseless fabric of this vision, the cloud-capped mountains, the gorgeous palaces, the solemn temples, the great globe itself, yea, all which it inherit shall dissolve. And like this insubstantial pageant faded, leave not a rack behind. We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleep." So this is what is regarded in Eastern philosophy as Maya or illusion. The word signifies that which can be measured, because anything that has a beginning and end is ultimately an illusion in the vast scale of things. It's also reminiscent of Edgar Allan Poe's statement that all that we see or seem is but a dream within a dream. It is poignant that everything we see around us in the world, and even we ourselves in our present form, will all disappear in time, disappear from memory. The Japanese refer to this as mono no awari, poignancy of life, but the realization of the beauty of it, the transience and the beauty. Prospero also reaches some kind of initiation, as he states that he breaks his staff or wand and drowns his book, maybe symbolizing that he has transcended the need for such basic magic. Raghavan Iyer writes, "We must also note the true significance of his final speech, the epilogue. Having consummated his purpose and performed his first task, Prospero the adept renounces the formal robe of the magician and resumes the ceremonial appearance of a duke. He has attained a higher degree of adeptship. He will return to earth life as a Rajarishi, or divine ruler, and now undertake the more difficult task of directing under royal guise large masses of men and re-establishing righteousness on earth. When he does this, Prospero the adept, like Padmapani of the Buddhist legend, completely identifies himself with the sufferings of mankind and assumes the burden of helping men to find their salvation." So it is similar then to the Buddhist teaching of the Bodhisattva, who renounces nirvana to return to the world, to inspire and instruct mankind. The fact that he does not exact any revenge but forgives even those who plotted against him reminds us of Jesus' injunction in the New Testament to forgive, not 7, but 70 times 7 times. Also, the Buddha said that hatred never overcomes hatred, only love overcomes hatred. So the Tempest, fittingly for a final play, ends on a high note. Not all of Shakespeare's plays have happy endings, of course, Romeo and Juliet being an example of his tragedies, but also it is a play about the power of love, and there are many beautiful moments in it. Shakespeare had the power to plumb the depths of human experience on many levels, and had great insights into psychology and the vast range of human experience. The Tempest is a highly mystical play, full of magic and beauty, and with a great message about forgiveness and reconciliation in a world where revenge and an eye for an eye is lauded rather than love thine enemy. In today's society, we need to learn this lesson. I've said this in most of my talks, and will continue to say it, because it is the one essential lesson that we must learn and live by if we are to survive. Intellectual learning alone won't save us, but as I've said before, only by all men becoming brothers and all women sisters, in a spiritual sense, will we be able to move forward in evolution. Teachers have come forward periodically to awaken us to this, but have largely been ignored except by a relative few. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, whenever there is a decline in righteousness and an increase in unrighteousness, O Arjuna, at that time I manifest myself on earth. This refers to the manifestation of the spirit on earth, and not in particular a person, though it may be, but only those open to it will benefit. And these efforts may be large or small and come through major spiritual teachers such as Krishna, or Jesus or Buddha, or in a smaller way through artists, poets, musicians, and philosophers, and in better times perhaps through politicians. But all of these play their part in the spiritualization of humanity, and many may be influenced by the adepts, who are called in theosophy the guardian wall, as they protect the earth from far worse disasters, though what they may be is a mystery, as many terrible things have befallen this planet through the ages. Some even relate this protection to alien races, and these may play a part too. So Shakespeare with his play has contributed to leavening the consciousness of humanity, especially with ones like The Tempest. So we've come full circle back to my favourite painting. This is called Miranda by John William Waterhouse. It's a beautiful painting, I think, because you've got the storm in the distance. We've got Miranda representing compassion and love, looking compassionately upon the storm. It's a very beautiful imagery to me. So thanks for listening. It wasn't a very deep, very long or very deep insight into The Tempest, just a few points that I wanted to make. Hope you enjoyed listening and watching, and see you again soon. Om Shanti, 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 peace, 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 peace on earth and goodwill to all beings.